Okay. Never done this before. Always feel tempted to do this after a movie. I'm gonna give my immediate impression after watching Universal Soldier: The Return. So, during this movie, I had to look up when Van Damme went to rehab and checked out of rehab and got himself clean and started to rebuild. Because I remember that he went to rehab for a very short time. He checked himself out of rehab after a month or a week, depending on what you read. But he got clean soon after that, regardless. It all begs the question of, like, why would you take this movie? From the standpoint of Van Damme's career, I guess by 99, he was coked out during Street Fighter. He experienced the post Street Fighter dip, and not just post Street Fighter box office wise, but he was hard to deal with and everything. He was, according to some reports, blacklisted for his on-set behavior. And he was doing tons of coke, and he was just unbearable. And so he has that big dip. And it's possible that in 99, the only thing he could do to get himself on screen and to be working was Universal Soldier: The Return. Which I still would have skipped if I were him. Like, better to do commercials, any random thing. Like, go do Japanese commercials, pay your rent, than actually make this movie. This movie does not need to exist, probably shouldn't exist. Good for Goldberg, I guess, that it exists, because he was massive at the time. And more people probably saw this movie because of him, Goldberg, than anything else. But then why make that movie? Because Goldberg's not great in this. Let's fucking dive in. The story makes no sense, has nothing to do with the previous films. The whole concept of the Unisols exists, but doesn't matter. They could be called Terminators. They probably should be some kind of cybernetic organism. There is nothing that connects to the original idea of regenerated soldiers being brought back to life. I forgot one thing. I remember this when I picked up my phone, because I tweeted about this. In Universal Soldier: The Return, all the Unisols, the supposed super soldiers, who are levels above the Unisols of the original film, they are all, like, mediocre, khaki shorts, lawn care dads with gray hair, receding hairlines. Like, all the super soldiers in this movie who aren't Bill Goldberg are just like your friend Phil. Like, they are not physical specimens whatsoever. And then out of nowhere, for reasons that I think will be findable on Wikipedia, there's a scene in a hospital where Goldberg rips his shirt off and fights like 5 dudes who are huge. And I imagine they are wrestlers. And they got their cameo fee and yada 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 for that moment. But the whole concept of the Unisols is ruined in this movie by the guys they cast as the Unisols. Like, they are extras, they're cameramen, they're carpenters, they're dads. And then there's some already terrible CGI about the supercomputer Seth that becomes the main villain that, spoiler alert, gives himself a body later. Thing that makes no sense, Luke Devereaux, Van Damme's character, has a kid now. The mom, they write out of the story, being like, oh, she's gone, she died, she whatever, like she's just cast away. How do you give a dead man a child? Like, if you care at all about, like, the Universal Soldier universe, which is a funny thing to say, I accept, write anything else for this man to care about, like, someone who can be kidnapped, because that's all women are for in action movies, I know. Write any other thing than he has a kid now, without an explanation. And then there's some terrible CGI about the, like, compound that they live and work in, where, like, the supercomputer is a babysitter for Van Damme's kid, and the supercomputer goes rogue and creates himself a body and uses the Unisols as his Terminators. The story sucks. The story makes no sense. Goldberg, as a character, isn't a character. You have to be a 90s kid who was aware of wrestling and accept that Goldberg was a powerful figure for him in this movie to make any sense. They just treat him like he's a Terminator who does jokes, and they dub all his lines.
Capture Luke Devereaux. Minimal damage. Oh, shit!
Because he will just, like, 3 times in the fucking movie, he gets thrown through the window and then says, I hate that guy, but it's an off-screen dub voice. There's a scene where they go to a strip club for no reason, like a Seagal movie, and all the strippers are terrible. They couldn't get anyone attractive or interesting to be stripper in strip club in a set that's obviously a hotel conference room. There's one little joke in that scene that I kind of like, where Van Damme's character runs past a phone sex operator who's doing bicep curls to make her voice sound tense. And I think that's funny. Other than that, nonsense bullshit. The scene, the whole movie is so clearly meant for television. Like, it's meant to be broken up by commercials. It's even filmed like a television show. It looks like an episode of Relic Hunter. Or if you know, like, Babylon 5 or Star Hunter or Sequest, those kinds of shows, that's what this movie looks like. With the fun exception that really C-grade nu metal rock songs just jump in anytime that action is supposed to be happening. Like, people will rappel from a ceiling and then just all of a sudden Static X is blaring. And it's not cool or fun. It's so blatantly out of place. And then, narratively, Van Damme, of course, defeats the evil supercomputer who has brought himself back to life, or to life, in the form of Michael Jai White. Then he defeats the greatest of the Unisols in Bill Goldberg. Then he runs out of a building and detonates a pyrotechnic that saves the day, ends the story, hug, credits, done. Everything we were worried about was solved by this explosion? We've established that the Unisols are like immune to gunfire, they can get thrown out of a building, they can get run over, they can burn to death, like they can get lit on fire. But the biggest pyrotechnic, most expensive explosion of the movie ends the movie, and everyone hugs. And by everyone, I mean Luke Devereaux, the guy who's been dead since Vietnam, his inexplicable child, and the reporter, I think, that he falls in love with, because the female Unisol who's a character in this is a martyr character who sacrificed herself to kill Goldberg. This is a nonsense ass movie. But in the state I'm in, 5 beers, I kinda liked it. I feel like if this were back in the day and I was flipping through the channels in the middle of the night or the middle of the afternoon when I had nothing to do, like hungover, switch to TBS, there's a movie on, you stop, you watch it, and then the next time you see it, you stop, you watch it again. I feel like that's this movie. It's moronic, but it's not boring, it's not insulting, it's not pretentious. It can sort of occupy that same space as like Tremors, Under Siege, Easy A. Just a delightful movie that you can see again and again and again, and eventually want to show your friends, to be like, hey, look at this, I've fallen in love with this movie. I have to show you this. Watch this moment. Watch this moment. Watch this moment. It's stupid. I am now going to get more drunk and watch the next Universal Soldier movie, Regeneration. So let's do it.